Hey guys, it's Ryan here from Explained, and welcome to another video. Today we'll be watching a movie called Sleeping Beauty, which was released back in 2011. So let's get started. Turn on subtitles and spoilers ahead. The story revolves around a university student named Lucy, who, like many other students, is financially struggling. She has a part-time job at a restaurant where she works in the evenings after her school hours. In the daytime, she has another job at an office. Despite having two jobs, she doesn't earn enough money to pay her tuition and rent. So she often participates as a research subject on paid medical experiments at a science laboratory, where she puts herself through a great deal of discomfort just to get that extra bit of money that can help her. She lives with her sister and her boyfriend, who keeps bugging her about her due rent payments. Even after she pays the rent, her sister's boyfriend doesn't make it easy on her, as he reminds her that it's her turn to clean the bathroom. Life is not easy at all for Lucy. One thing that makes her happy is visiting her friend Birdman, who's an alcoholic and happens to be really attracted to Lucy. He tries to tell her about his feelings, but Lucy only enjoys his company and keeps her relationship with Birdman strictly platonic. On her way home, Lucy decides to respond to an ad for a short-term job she had seen in the student paper. She calls the phone number on the ad and gets asked a few questions about her appearance. Lucy then gets told to appear physically at the office for an interview. She goes to the interview wearing a short dress as requested. She gets taken to a room where she meets Clara, who compliments her on her beauty and then briefs her about the job she'll be doing. Clara runs a service where young women serve as waitresses at private functions. She tells Lucy that the job requires her to serve as a waitress wearing just lingerie at private parties held mostly by men. She further details that the job has room for promotion and the pay is $250 an hour. Hearing the massive pay she's going to get, Lucy gladly accepts the job offer. Clara then tells her that the job relies on mutual trust and discretion. If she's ever found to have broken the trust, she'll have to face heavy penalties. Clara also assures her that the men are not allowed to have sexual intercourse with her, and her job is only to serve at the parties. But she also warns Lucy to not think of this job as a full-time career and to save as much money as possible so she can pay her student loans and quit the job before it gets too late. Lucy then gets asked to take off her clothes, after which a man enters the room and checks her body. She seems to be fit for the job, and before leaving, Clara gives her a new name for the job. While at work, Lucy will be known as Sarah. After getting the job, Lucy goes to Birdman's house. Without revealing anything about her new job, Lucy starts to practice her serving skills on her friend. Birdman notices that Lucy has gotten her nails done, but she doesn't reveal the reason behind it, and she keeps her encounter with Clara a secret. Pretty soon, Lucy gets called for her first night at the job. A man comes to pick her up and takes her to the site. There she meets Sophie, the head of the waitresses. Sophie asks Lucy to go to a room, get her makeup done, and get dressed for the job. Then we see all the waitresses in the kitchen, where Lucy is the only one dressed in white, while all the other girls are wearing more revealing black lingerie. A few seconds later, a group of men arrive and Lucy begins to serve them one by one. The dinner goes smoothly, but when Lucy begins to serve brandy to those men, one of them intentionally trips her. Then the man who organized the event helps her and tells her to not worry about it. When the private event ends, Sophie compliments Lucy on her first job and hands her an envelope full of cash for her payment. After getting back home, Lucy lights a cigarette and looks at the money she just earned after her first session as a lingerie-clad waitress. She then picks up one of the notes and burns it in a way to keep her pride. The next morning, she resumes her office work, but she looks to be less serious about this job as she's gotten a better paying one. Soon she gets called for another shift at a private party. Lucy asks Sophie about how long she has been doing this for, but Sophie doesn't give her an answer. The next day, she goes to Birdman's house. While Birdman is preparing coffee for her, Lucy asks if he'll marry her. Birdman replies yes and tells her that he feels ready. Upon hearing his answer, Lucy starts to cry, maybe because she feels ashamed of herself or because she feels sorry for Birdman. One day on her way to class, Lucy receives a call from Clara's assistant, who offers her a promotion. Lucy asks about what she needs to do and how much her pay will be. When she gets her answer, she quickly accepts the offer. A driver comes to pick her up as usual. She's taken to a mansion, and while entering it, she sees a girl being taken inside a car. Later, when she gets ready and meets Clara, she's briefed about her new job. Clara gives her a cup of tea to drink and tells her that she will be sedated voluntarily, and then she'll have to sleep with her male clients. The clients are only allowed to caress and cuddle her. Just like her previous job, there will be no sexual intercourse. After drinking the tea, Lucy starts to lose her consciousness, and then we see her lying in a bed. A few seconds later, Clara enters the room with the same old person who helped Lucy at her first ever shift as a private party waitress. The man brings up a conversation with Clara as they both sit on the bed. Clara reminds the man of the rules of the engagement and then leaves. After Clara leaves, the man takes off his clothes and lies beside Lucy. He gently starts to caress her body, all the while she has no sense of what's going on. Later, when she gets her consciousness back, she is driven off the mansion. When she gets back home, her sister's boyfriend tells her to leave the house in 2 weeks as she hasn't paid her rent on time. Her sister doesn't stop her boyfriend and apologizes to Lucy. Lucy has the money to pay up her due rent, but she decides to leave. She goes to a real estate office where she asks about their services. Lucy has enough money, so she buys a nice apartment for herself. After spending a huge amount of money, she calls Clara and asks if she can book more appointments for her. With not much money left, she goes back to volunteering as a medical subject to get paid a small amount of money. During the experiment, Lucy receives a call from Clara about her next appointment. She rushes out of the lab, and then we see her lying unconscious on a bed. Clara enters with a new client who happens to be the same person who had intentionally tripped her before. Like usual, Clara reminds him of the rules and leaves the room. After Clara leaves, the man undresses and starts looking through Lucy's body. Unlike her first client, this person gets very rough with Lucy while she lies unconscious. Lucy leaves the mansion after she wakes up and goes for her lectures. She then receives a call from Birdman and leaves the class in a rush. On getting to his house, she finds out that he is overdosed with painkillers. She sees Birdman dying in his bed and she can't hold back her tears. Birdman asks her to lie next to him, and Lucy does as she's asked with tears in her eyes. At Birdman's funeral, Lucy meets her ex-boyfriend. They both discuss their current situations. And all of a sudden, Lucy asks him if he will marry her. She seems desperate to quit her job and to have someone to support her in all ways. And with her only friend Birdman gone, she looks at her ex-boyfriend. But unlike Birdman, her ex-boyfriend refuses, saying she had her chance before, which she didn't take. Afterwards, we see Lucy on the bed unconscious, just as usual. Clara walks in with another client and reminds him of the rules that he will not have intercourse with her and won't leave any marks on her body. Since Lucy has not been consistent with her desk job, her supervisor fires her. She then goes into an electronics shop to get a camera. Lucy plants the camera in a box as she plans on using it in her next appointment to see what's actually going on and what's being done to her. Lucy is then seen arranging tables at the restaurant where she works. Her friend approaches her and asks her to party with him. The next morning, we see that she had slept with the guy. Lucy starts to get ready in a hurry as she's going to get picked up for her next appointment. After getting to the mansion, Lucy gets ready as usual and sits beside Clara. She then asks Clara if she could for once see what is being done to her while she sleeps. Clara then tells her that she perfectly understands her, but she can't allow the exposure of her client or risk possible blackmail on them. Lucy begs her, but Clara insists on not allowing her. Lucy then takes the sedative tea and goes to bed. But before she loses full consciousness, she manages to plant the camera secretly inside the room. Clara walks in with the same man that Lucy had her first encounter with. The man asks Clara to give him the same sedative tea which was given to Lucy. Clara hands him the teacup and the old man drinks it all. Then Clara leaves them alone in the room. The next morning, Clara enters the room to check up on Lucy and the man since none of them have woken up. She opens the window and then checks the man's pulse, but she is not surprised when she finds out that the old man had died, given his age and the amount of sedative he requested. Clara sits on the edge of the bed and thinks. She then notices that Lucy hasn't woken up. She tries to wake her up, but Lucy's not responding because she is overdosed on the sedative. Clara is finally able to resuscitate her by giving her mouth-to-mouth CPR. Lucy wakes up and sees the dead body beside her. She begins to cry and scream after knowing what she has become a part of. The movie ends with the footage that has been recorded by the secret camera planted by Lucy. Thanks so much for watching. Tell us your thoughts about the movie down below in our comment section. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and do watch some of our other videos as well. And before you leave, make sure to subscribe to the channel for more movie recaps.